One of the key topics discussed at the gathering was the African Continental Free Trade Area and what needed to happen for this structure to help propel African growth and development. This as intra-African trade still remains relatively low at below 20%.
One of the first protocols in the AFCFTA tackles the tariff barriers to reduce them, and essentially the vision is to arrive at a point where in Africa the movement of goods from one country to another is free of any cost.
However, what's more concerning right now are the non-tariff barriers creating impediments for intra-African trade, with infrastructure a major issue.
The mobility of both capital, goods, but also human beings is very, very central to whether it makes sense for people to move from one area of Africa to another. So there's got to be a ramp up in investment in infrastructure, whether you are thinking about air, logistics. You need to have a flight from South Africa to Abidjan, as we do have now. You need to have a flight from South Africa to Egypt. You need to have a flight from Ethiopia to the other side of the continent so that business people can easily move across the continent.
Broadly, investment is needed in key areas like broadband infrastructure as well as financial system architecture to ensure that seamless, cost-efficient payments can help to take place across the continent as businesses transact. So-called blended financing was also cited as a tool that can go a long way in getting major projects done and reducing the risks at play for all parties involved.
In a situation where you have an overstretched public sector balance sheet, we all agree on the need to build the rail, but we say the public sector doesn't have sufficient money to do that on its own. And then a private investor says, well, I am willing to put rail on the floor to enable this, but I'm going to charge a high tariff in order to recover the money that I've put in here. Now, what blended finance does is that it helps to de-risk the private sector investment. So you bring a public sector institution to co-invest with the private sector firm on that front, so that the tariffing that they impose on the rail is lower than what they would have done on their own.
While Africa doesn't look to discriminate about who its investors are, Deputy Minister Godlimpi did caution against an over-reliance on foreign capital, stating that foreign lenders tend to charge higher interest rates based on their risk assessment of Africa. He urged the African private sector to partner with development finance institutions and or local financial institutions to invest in major projects, adding that the continent had 1.4 billion people and the potential for local industry to have a ready market available. He cited processing cocoa from West Africa as an example.
We need to co-invest in capacity building in the continent. It may very well be that Côte d'Ivoire is not in a position from a capital endowment point of view to build processing facilities in Côte d'Ivoire. But South Africa has a much more liquid private sector, and that South African private sector can actually come and build those processing facilities in Côte d'Ivoire and then move those products into South Africa without going via Europe. So we have to take very seriously this way, including oranges. Africa consumes a lot of orange juice, but ask the question, where is the orange coming from and where is the orange juice coming from? Sometimes it's oranges that are farmed in Africa, shipped to Europe, and then they're coming back as the final product, which is, it's an absurdity in terms.
Godlimpi emphasized the importance of peace and security on the continent so that business people are able to move goods and people freely across Africa without fear, and ultimately encouraged all states to do their bit to ensure the ease of doing business in their jurisdictions, making it easier for private sector players to do their bit in boosting trade and investment. Nompumelelo Siziba, SABC News, Johannesburg.